Hey y'all, welcome back to my channel. My name is Taya and this is Taya's Turning Pages. So it's actually Tuesday night around 9:30, which is why I look a little bit crazy right now, so please ignore. And I got my ring light in the back here, but editing me popping in, I just wanted to say that this video initially was going to be way too long, damn near 45 minutes to an hour type of long. So I decided to make an executive decision and split this video up into two parts. So this video that you're watching right now is part one of my March reading wrap up, where I talk about my lowest rated books and like my middle of the road books. And part two is actually going to feature me gushing over my favorite books and all of the 5-star books that I read for the month of March. I wasn't gonna put you guys through an hour-long video because I didn't want to put myself through editing an hour-long video, so that is why this is broken up into two parts. So please make sure you subscribe to my channel as well as turn on those post notifications so that way you're notified when part two goes up, because like I said, that one will feature all of my 5-star reads. Now back to the regularly scheduled video. So by the title of today's video, you can tell that this is going to be my March wrap-up. Honestly, this was actually a very interesting reading month for me because I had some flops, but I also had some new faves. So I feel like it was like a hodgepodge and a mixture of both of those things, but we do have quite a few books to get through, so let's get started. So the first book that I have here, I actually haven't even written my review for it yet on Storygraph or even on my Bookstagram because I'm still trying to even figure out if I even want to talk about this book on those platforms, but I'm going to talk about it here. And the lowest rated book that I have here is sitting at a 2-star, and it is The Club by Ellery Lloyd. Now, if you guys have watched my most anticipated reads of 2022 video, then you will know that this book was mentioned. And guys, this was such a disappointment for me, and I'm still really mad about it because I really thought that this book was going to be the one, and it just was a flop. It flopped so hard. So I'm not even going to try to explain the synopsis because there was just so much going on. So I'm just going to read the flap because it's easier that way. But right here it says, the home group is a glamorous collection of celebrity members clubs dotted across the globe, where the rich and famous can party hard and then crash out in its 5-star suites, far from the prying eyes of fans and the media. The most spectacular of all is Island Home, a closely guarded, ultra-luxurious resort just off the English coast, and its 3-day launch party is easily the most coveted A-list invite of the decade. But behind the scenes, tensions are at a breaking point. The ambitious and expensive project has pushed the home group CEO and his long-suffering team to their absolute limits. All of them have something to hide, and that's before the beautiful people with their own ugly secrets even set foot on the island. As tempers spray and behaviors worsens, as things get more sinister by the hour and the body count piles up, some of Island Home's members will begin to wish they never made the guest list, because at this club, if your name is on the list, then you're not getting out. So yes, that is pretty much the synopsis. Like I mentioned, this was a 2-star for me. I have never read anything by this author duo before, and honestly, I don't know if I'm ever going to pick something up by them again because this book was the definition of slow burn. Typically, I don't mind slow burn books. Like, I'm starting to really get into slow burn romances more so, but I don't mind a slow burn thriller from time to time. I don't really read them that much because sometimes it can get very daunting and annoying when they don't get to the point, but there are times where I will pick one up and I'll really enjoy it, but this one just missed the mark completely. I felt like a good chunk of the book, like 50% of the book, was spent talking about the club and just how ultra luxurious it was, how it had all these state-of-the-art features, and how everyone was fighting for a spot and wanted to really be on the guest list for this club. And I felt like it was just a lot of telling and not showing. It's really interesting because, like I said, the authors really go on and on about how this club is so exclusive and how anybody that's anybody gets to join this club. You're gonna do all of that. I really need for it to be atmospheric because I felt like we were just getting bogged down by the details of the club, and it was just too tedious and too meticulous that I did not care. I wanted to get to the thrilling part, and I wanted to get to the murders that were taking place in the club and on the island. And we didn't really get any action until I want to say the last 30 or 20% of the book. I'm not gonna lie to you guys, I really did enjoy that like 20 to 30%. I really liked the twists and turns that the authors took when it came to the actual like murders, and I also really liked the way that everything tied together in the end. But I just felt like because we were too bogged down by the details in like a good chunk of the book, it just wasn't worth it. Like the ending and everything just didn't make up for the fact that there was just too many details in this book, and that's just really unfortunate. One thing I will say that I did like was I really like the alternating POVs between the like characters that we follow in this story. So you follow some of the staff, and there's one person in here, one character in here, I think her name is Jess, and she's actually new to the home group, and she's like the newly appointed I think housekeeping director or manager. And her storyline is really interesting because she has an ulterior motive for why she actually even applied to become a part of the home group staff and why she even wanted to work the launch weekend. And finding out her storyline and her ulterior motive was just so fascinating, and I just loved how everything came together when it came to her storyline. But other than that, fortunately, just the storyline and like I said, the twists and turns at the end just weren't enough for me to enjoy this book. I felt myself dragging my feet when it came to picking up this book. Whenever I did pick up this book, I found myself groaning and moaning and just being annoyed because I did not want to read it. And there were a lot of points where I really wanted to DNF this, because you guys know I'm the queen of DNFing. I don't really give a fuck. Like, if a book isn't really holding my interest, or if I really don't connect with the writing style or the characters, then I will DNF it and go on about my life. But I really wanted to find out what was going on and really wanted to know what the actual twists and turns were. The last thing that I will say that I did enjoy about this book was the fact that there were actual, like, multiple murders that took place. It wasn't just one and done. There were multiple people getting got on this island. So I really did like the fact that there was an actual body count piling up, like they mentioned in the synopsis. But yeah, other than that, this book was a flop, and I will be donating this to my local thrift store. So before we jump into the next book, I just wanted to apologize because you guys are probably going to hear noise in the background. It is raining where I am from, and I'm trying really hard to talk over it, and I'm gonna try my hardest to like filter it out when I go back to edit this video, but please bear with me. I cannot film this video any other time, so just bear with me. I'm going to try to get through this wrap up as quickly as possible. So the rain slowed down for a little bit, so I'm going to try to hurry up, guys. Next lowest rated book that I have here is The Night Shift by Alex Finlay. So I actually rated this one a 3.5 out of 5 stars, so a little bit higher than The Club, and I did enjoy this one a lot more than that book, but another disappointing and unmemorable thriller for me. This story is very interesting in the sense that there's a lot going on with this book. So I'm going to try my hardest again to explain the synopsis as best as possible. So there are 2 different time periods that this book takes place in. One in 1999, on the cusp of Y2K, so the new millennium, aka the year 2000, and the other timeline is in present day. I don't think that we get the actual year that the like modern story takes place in, but I want to assume that it's in, like, you know, the 2020s or something like that. But anyways, in 1999 there was a mass murder that took place at this Blockbuster in this small town, and there was one survivor, and she has carried all of that trauma and pretty much survivor's guilt ever since that night. And she actually ends up becoming a therapist because she really wants to help people that were in the same situation as her, but also just trying to, I think, heal on her own time as well. Moving on to the present day timeline, there is another mass murder that takes place, but it takes place at this, I want to say, like, dairy creamery shop. When investigators get to this crime scene, they notice a lot of similarities between this case as well as the case that happened in 1999. And so the investigators start to think that there could be a connection to these cases, and they start to think that the killer from the Blockbuster murder also committed the dairy creamery shop murders. So the survivor, so the lone survivor of the Blockbuster murders is actually thrown into this investigation because she is a therapist, and so the investigators want to get her insight and her input and try to see if there is a link between these cases. So you are following multiple POVs. You're following the POV of the lone survivor as well as one of the lead FBI investigators on this case, and you're also following the POV of a suspect in the original case's brother, and he is a lawyer. Following all of these different POVs, and all of these characters are pretty much on this collision course, and the story pretty much takes off from there. So I know that the plot sounds a little bit convoluted, but that's because it is, and that was part of the reason why I rated this so low and why I rated this a 3.5 out of 5 stars, because I just felt like there was way too much going on in this book for me. I felt like this book was trying to be way too many things at once. At times it felt like I was reading this like crime drama, so almost very similar to Law and Order, but then at other times it felt like that this book really wanted to be like a strict like mystery thriller vibe. But it just, I felt like there was just way too much going on in this story. Now I did like 2 out of the 3 POVs, so I did like the lone survivor's POV. Her name is Ella, so I really did enjoy her POV, and I also really liked the lead FBI agent Keller's POV as well. I didn't really care for the original suspect's brothers because I just felt like he didn't really add too much to the story, unfortunately, which you would have thought he would have because he has such a close tie to one of the original suspects. So I really would have thought that he would have had more interesting stuff to add to the story, but I feel like he just didn't really add that much to it. And going back to Ella's POV, she's a therapist, like I mentioned, so she's dealing with a lot of trauma in her own right, and she's dealing with a lot of survivor's guilt as well. She still has a lot that she has to heal from, and I really would have liked that we would have explored her trauma a little bit more. And I know that sounds really weird, but I really would have liked that we would have just explored kind of her feelings and her emotions a little bit more, because what she went through was very traumatic and was horrifying. And I just feel like as a therapist, you thought we would have got that, but we didn't. I just felt like we only scratched the surface with Ella's background and what she went through during that night in 1999. And then going on to Agent Keller's POV, I actually really enjoyed hers, and I liked how action-packed hers was, but it was so unrealistic because Agent Keller is actually 8 months pregnant, and she's doing all of this stuff while she's 8 months pregnant. And I'm not saying that women who are pregnant cannot do a lot of active things. Of course, that's not what I'm saying at all. Mothers and women are very, very strong. But I just felt like there were just things that Agent Keller was getting herself into that just did not make sense as an 8-month pregnant woman. That's all I'm saying. And this book was written by a man, so I'm assuming that has something to do with it. I don't really know, because there are male authors that do a good job, in my opinion, of writing female characters. And I feel like the marketing for this book heavily relied on the Y2K and the new millennium and year 2000 aspect of it. it, but we didn't really get those atmospheric vibes. I felt like, yes, we were told that these horrific events took place in 1999 at a Blockbuster, but we didn't really get those feels and those vibes. I felt like it was just like mentioned, like, yeah, this happened in 1999, but like I said, I feel like the marketing really relied on that, and I just feel like we didn't get too much of it, which is also really frustrating, because if you're gonna market that, then like,
can we at least get more of it in the story?
But that's just me. Yeah, this was an unmemorable thriller for me. It's another book that I'm going to unhaul and donate, because I don't ever see myself rereading this, and I just didn't love this as much as other people have. And I know that this book has been getting pretty great reviews. I feel like this book is sitting at a 4-star rating, I think, on Goodreads, but most of the people that I've seen on Instagram have rated this a 4 or 5 stars. So I don't know what I'm missing. I don't know if I just didn't read the same book as those people, but yeah, I just feel like this book was kind of mid. So I don't know, it's really a shame that 2 thrillers that I was really anticipating just didn't do it for me. But yeah, you live, you laugh, and you learn, and that's what I did here. But yeah, just had to come on here and kind of rant about these ones. So I actually forgot to mention one other book that I actually read for the month of March, and I rated it in the lowest rated category, and it is The Score by Elle Kennedy. So this is a book that is a part of the Off-Campus series, and this is the 3rd book in the Off-Campus series, and this actually follows one of the other hockey players named Dean, and Dean is known as the campus playboy. He's pretty much always with a new girl every day of the week, and he is known for not having a girlfriend and not wanting a girlfriend, so he's always like hooking up with someone new. And so one day he meets his match, aka Allie, and him and Allie actually hook up, and Dean cannot get Allie out of his head. So you witness Dean pretty much having an identity crisis and trying to figure out why he is so wrapped up into Allie, not understanding that he actually is more than likely in love with her, and the story takes off from there. So this book was a flop for me as well, which I'm really sad about, because I told you guys in my previous videos that I'm actually a fan of the Off-Campus series. Before I get into the things that I did not like about this book, I will talk about the things that I did like. I really enjoy the smut aspect of this book. Elle Kennedy can do no wrong when it comes to writing steam, okay? I will give her that. Her and Tessa Bailey are like my girls when it comes to steam, because they just know what they're doing, and they don't make, to me, they don't make it cringy, they don't make it cheesy. They like really commit to it, and they give it to you straight, and I just really like that. So I really liked the steam in here. That did not lack in that department at all. And it's really interesting because I feel like different to The Deal and The Mistake, because both Allie and Dean are very comfortable with their sexuality and very comfortable with sex in general. I really did like that aspect of the book. I feel like Elle Kennedy did a good job and handled that aspect of the book pretty well, in my opinion. Another thing that I liked about the story was the banter between Dean and Allie. I really liked their sense of humor. Now moving on to the things that I didn't like. I did not care for the writing style. I know that I said I really liked the banter and the dialogue between both Allie and Dean, and I did, but when it came to the actual like writing, I did not really care for the writing style, which is so frustrating and so interesting at the same time, because I felt like in The Deal the writing style was a little bit wonky at times, but then when we got to The Mistake, I felt like Elle Kennedy's writing style really improved, and I was so like invested in both Grace and Logan as characters, and I just really enjoy, and I feel like a lot of that could be attributed to the writing. I just feel like the way that Elle Kennedy wrote both Logan and Grace was just really compelling, and it just felt believable. And again, I was invested in their storylines both individually and collectively. But then when we got to The Score, it just seemed like all of that progress just kind of derailed a little bit, because there were a lot of times where I was reading this and I was like, what is going on with the writing? Like, why is this written this way? This is very cringy, or why would she include this in the book? Back then, I feel like when it came to books, it was just a no man's land. It was just like the Wild Wild West. You could just write characters from different backgrounds any which way, and the publishers and agents and really the public really wouldn't even say anything or bat an eyelash. But now reading these books in this decade, there are a lot of glaring issues with the way that some of these characters are written. And then moving on to Dean, why I did not like Dean's personality at all. I'm sorry, I did not buy into Dean as a character, and I honestly didn't really even care for Dean when I read The Deal and The Mistake. Like, I thought he was definitely funny, and I liked the fact that he was like the campus playboy, and I knew that he was definitely going to get his storyline of, like, you know, him being the campus playboy and then him finally meeting his match and falling in love with a girl that doesn't really care about him or give him the time of the day. Like, I eat that trope up usually, but something about Dean just did not sit right with me, and I just didn't really like his personality. Because of all of that, that is what stopped this book from being higher rated on my list. So if I had to tier rank the books that I've read so far in this series, The Mistake, The Deal, and then The Score. That is where we are at right now. So I have 2 books left in the Off-Campus series, A Goal and then The Legacy. So now moving on to my middle of the road books, and both of these books were actually rated like a 4 stars, so like I don't consider that low at all, but you know, again, they were like middle of the road. So I don't have physical copies for either of these books, but the first book in this category is Cherish Farrah by Bethany C. Mara. So this is actually a story that follows 2 black girls, one named Cherish and one named Farrah. They are both very rich, but Cherish is actually like way more rich than Farrah, because Cherish was actually adopted into this white family, and they are very, very rich. Like I'm talking like 1% type of rich. And Farrah and her family are pretty well off, but unfortunately they do face unexpected financial hardship to the point where their house is actually being foreclosed. So Farrah is trying to come to terms with this and really understand that this is her new reality, but she's also really upset and really angry with her parents for even allowing this to happen, essentially. And so because of this, and because Farrah is kind of on the outs with her parents, her family as well as Cherish's family agreed to let Farrah stay with Cherish's family. Farrah moves in with Cherish's family. Farrah actually has an ulterior motive for why she even wants to move in with Cherish, but unbeknownst to Farrah, there's actually something more sinister going on with Cherish and her family, and the story takes off from there. So like I mentioned, I rated this a 4 out of 5 stars, and I actually really enjoyed this book. I know this book has a lot of mixed reviews. You either love it or you hate it, or you really just don't even understand it, so you don't even know what rating to give it, because I will admit that this book is definitely like a fever dream. When it comes to the writing of this book and the way that the story is told and the plot itself, I feel like it really does have that stream of consciousness-esque type of writing that we see in a lot of unhinged books nowadays. And that's why I feel like a lot of people didn't enjoy this book, but honestly it made me enjoy it. I actually really like the crazy and chaotic writing style. I'm starting to realize that I really like these type of books, because even though it takes me a minute to really grasp on to what the author is trying to convey and also really trying to 100% connect to the writing style, I still have a good time when I read them. I found it entertaining, and I find that writing style kind of entertaining for me, and again, it just makes for a very interesting and different reading experience that I wouldn't get if I stuck to the same like romance and thriller books that I typically read, you know? So that's just the one thing that I wanted to say about that. But in terms of why I liked it, besides that, I really enjoyed peeling back the layers of the dynamic of Cherish and Farrah. Their friendship was borderline, if not toxic. They really relied on each other and were very, very dependent on each other, to the point where it felt as though they were just one. So because of that, you could tell that they like hated to be apart. They were really inseparable. But even with all of that, you could definitely tell that there was an underlying sense and feeling of jealousy and envy and even hatred, but not like your typical like, you know, oh I hate my best friend, or like typical like jealousy and envy. It was like a deadly type of feeling that I got. You really got to get into Farrah's head and really hear her thoughts and how she really felt about Cherish at certain points throughout the book. It was really fascinating. I thought Farrah was a fantastic and compelling unreliable narrator. I know a lot of people don't like unreliable narrators, but I love them. I think that they have more spice to the story, and I feel like they just make the story more fun. I love playing this guessing game and trying to figure out if what they're telling us is real or not, but also trying to figure out, okay, which pieces are real and which pieces are fake. I just really like that. I don't know what it is. It just adds a certain je ne sais quoi or elevation to the reading experience for me. So that's why I really enjoyed Farrah's character. Just like the way that her mind worked, and I liked finding out what made her tick. Don't quote me on this because this wasn't explicitly stated in the book, but I definitely think Farrah had OCD when it came to control. She really loved being in control, and if she felt as though she wasn't in control, she felt like the world was ending, everything was crumbling around her, and that life as we know it was no more. That is how she felt, and her erratic and violent behavior at times reflected that. I feel like we only really scratched the surface with Cherish. This book really focuses on Farrah and her POV and how she feels. Cherish really was like a secondary character, even though she was a main character, if that makes sense. So I feel like, I didn't really get super connected to Cherish's character, unfortunately, but I still feel like she was an integral part of the story. I feel like her character and her role still served the story well. In terms of the actual plot itself, I did enjoy it, and I feel like I understood what Bethany Simara was trying to do, because this is classified as social horror. This also has been marketed as Get Out meets My Sister the Serial Killer. So I did pick up on those social horror cues and those vibes. The reason why I rated this a 4-star was because the book had potential to really go dark and really go there. Cherish's mother actually gives Farrah a gift, and when you find out the actual meaning of this gift, raises the stakes, and it definitely makes you feel as though that the story is really going to go there and get really, really dark. But unfortunately it didn't go in that direction, and I thought it was. So that could have just been my own expectations and my own assumptions, but I just would have liked it if the story would have went a little bit darker than what it did. That's all I'm saying. I felt like the ending was a little bit rushed. I also felt like there were some plot holes that we just didn't like tie up, but all in all, I did enjoy this book. It's not my favorite read of the year, but I did enjoy it, and I understand why people didn't enjoy it. This is not going to be a book for everybody. I know Kayla actually did a reading vlog on this, and she read this book and she did not enjoy it, and when she was explaining why she didn't enjoy it, I totally understood where she was coming from, and I was laughing because I was like, totally get what you're saying. It's one of those things where it's like you either like it or you don't like it. It really does boil down to that. The last book that I have in this middle of the road category is Hana Carries On by Uzma Halaludin. I'm pretty sure that's how you pronounce her last name. Right here it says, Hana Khan's family-run halal restaurant is on its last legs. So when a flashy competitor gets ready to open nearby, bringing their inevitable closure even closer, she turns to her anonymously hosted podcast and her lively and long-lasting relationship with one of her listeners for advice. But a hate-motivated attack on their neighborhood complicates the situation further, as does Hana's growing attraction for Adine, the young owner of the rival business, who might not be a complete stranger after all. So I rated this one a 4 out of 5 stars, and I actually really did enjoy this book. I know that this author actually has another book, and it's called Aisha at Last, and I've never read that one, and I wanted to read that one first, but this was a book club pick, and one of the members in my book club picked this one. I really liked the themes that were explored here. Of course, Hana is a young Muslim woman, and she really does talk about her experiences as a young Muslim woman living in a town that does unfortunately have Islamophobia pretty much running rampant. It is really interesting reading from her perspective and learning more about Islam, and also learning more just about what she has to deal with on a day-to-day basis. But I also just really enjoy the important discussions that I feel like this book just brings up for anybody. So I do think that this book is a great book for a book club discussion, because there's just so much that you could talk about with this book. And I really enjoyed Hana's character. I thought she was very funny, very witty, and I just loved how like nice and sweet she was. There were certain points in here where I wanted Hana a little bit more assertive, because there were some people talking to her a little bit crazy, and I really would have liked for her to be a little bit more of a spitfire, but I understand that that's not how she is written. The aspect of this book that I really enjoyed was the sense of community that was woven throughout this story. Hana is very close with her family, but also with the people in her like direct community. They have town hall meetings, so think of Gilmore Girls. They have town hall meetings where they discuss what's going on with the local businesses, as well as what's going on with the children in the community, and I just really love that, because I feel like, I don't want to say it's not realistic, because of course there are small towns and people that do have this sense of community, but I have never grown up in an environment like that. So reading from that perspective, it was just really nice and really wholesome, and I like the fact that everybody looked out for each other no matter what. Moving on to the thing that I really didn't like, I did not buy into the romance with Hana and Adine. I'm sorry, I did not buy into it, you guys. It's weird because in real life, Hana and Adine are like enemies and rivals. They cannot stand each other, because Adine and his father are looking to open up their own halal business, so obviously they're rivaling and competing with Hana and her mother and her sister's business. So right off the bat, they are already, you know, star-crossed / enemies to lovers. I just didn't buy into the romance at all. I didn't really care for Adine's character, to be honest. I understand that he was in between a rock and a hard place when it came to his father. He really was trying to be a good son and really, like, you know, listen to his father and take his father's business advice, but he was also trying to please and accommodate Hana as well. So I understand that he was between a rock and a hard place, but there were certain times where him and Hana in the very beginning of the book where they got into really heated arguments, and he said some things that I just felt like they were personally unforgivable, and I just felt like Hana could have did better, but that's just me. But because of that, it just really didn't allow me to buy into the romance when it actually happened. And I feel like this book really focuses on Hana coming into her own as a young woman, like grappling with her identity, versus it being rom-com and romantic heavy. Like, the romance was definitely a part of the plot, and it definitely did help drive the plot, but I felt like it took a backseat to Hana really coming into her own as a young woman, and again grappling with her sense of identity and culture in this town and state that she lives in. So all in all, I did enjoy the book, and I really did enjoy the important themes that were woven throughout it. I really liked the discussions about Islamophobia and just what it means to be a young Muslim person, but specifically a young Muslim woman in a predominantly white town. I did love the journalistic aspect and the podcast element of the story as well. The romance unfortunately fell really flat for me, and when I was actually in my book club discussion, I said that to the ladies in my book club, and one of them actually said to me, have you ever watched You've Got Mail? And I actually never watched that movie, and she said that could be the reason why I didn't really care for their romance, or why I didn't buy into Adine as the character. So I am going to watch the movie at some point to see if her hypothesis was right. At some point, the audiobook for this was phenomenal. I loved the narrator. I do not know her name, but I need to look it up. I will put her name on the screen here so that way you guys can check out the audiobook, but her voice acting and narration was beautiful. I loved it. Right, y'all, and those are all of the books I read for March. I do feel like my thoughts were kind of all over the place in this video and a little bit chaotic and unhinged, because that's how I feel like this reading month was for me and how some of these books were. So I'm gonna try my hardest to edit this video to make it as succinct and cohesive as possible, but if I do come off as a little bit of a hot mess in this video, I am so sorry about that. But like, there's some days and some videos and sometimes where I just kind of like want to word vomit and just word dump all of my thoughts and rants about these books that I read, because that's just how it goes sometimes. I don't know, I feel like not all the time I can be like super structured and like formal when it comes to some of these books. But anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Definitely make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. It really helps me my channel out. And lastly, please make sure you follow me on Bookstagram as well as Storygraph. I leave that information linked down below, as well as at the end of the video, like I always do. I will see you guys in my next video. Bye.